Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soul Sessions. My name is Alex. It's a pleasure to connect with you again. In our ninth episode here in the new season 5 of the podcast, it's my favorite time when I welcome amazing guests for a rich conversation. I love talking about mental health on this podcast, so it's a real pleasure for me to share a wonderful conversation with Vanessa Naumann on the topic of intuition, listening to our heart whispers, and how to differentiate that soul led voice from feelings and emotions that may deter us from following our path, such as fear. I had a lot of fun chatting with Vanessa and am super excited to share this episode. Vanessa teaches the curious, like creatives, leaders, and changemakers, how to decode their unconscious patterns and break free from the limited frame of thinking to come fully alive in their body and unfold their unique impact. It's all about practicing how to tune into the body, listen, and breathe. Skills Vanessa believes are essential to see ourselves and the world around us clearly, to make wise decisions and live fulfilled lives. She's here to remind us of our own unique brilliance and power. I will link Vanessa's website and social media handles in the description of this episode. Without further ado, let's get into it. Yeah, okay. So, Vanessa, welcome. Thank you so much for hanging out and today and talking about something that I think is going to be really resonant with a lot of people. I would love to kind of just dive right in and start exploring this topic that you also introduced on your podcast, which I'm going to let you kind of talk about and spotlight a little bit later. But this idea of kind of using the heart to who make decisions that are more emotionally influenced and that are more grounded in intuition. And I know it's a big topic for a lot of people. And I would love for you to kind of just tell us how this came about for you, your work in that space, and what we can kind of start practicing worldwide.
Sure. Thank you for having me, first of all, Alexandra. The heart for me is a big thing because I feel like I've always been a heart centered person. As a child, I was very intuitive, very emotional, very, naive in a way. And unfortunately, in the world that we live in, oftentimes that is not received so super well. So naive is sometimes seen as something that is negative, right? Like, don't be so naive, these sentences, I'm sure we all have heard them. And I feel like growing up, I got a little bit distorted with that. So my heart, I feel like got a little bit hurt in the sense of, um, yeah, like I shouldn't be loving. I shouldn't be so big hearted. I shouldn't be so like in my heart and naive and fiercely loving. And so I feel like I stopped doing that a bit. I stopped giving bounteously. And and then I realized that I was doing it in my early 20s. I realized, oh, life isn't so fun like that. I want to give my friends and I want to give my lover and I want to, give the person on the street a big smile. That's just who I am. But I feel like I started fearing a little bit to be so in
Mm,
touch with people because sometimes I felt like it wasn't well received. And so I realized I guess I have to work through a few of those topics, And when I started getting into spirituality, like consciously, um, I understood the power of the heart and
mm,
that making decisions from our head is logically fine. Yeah. But when we do only the logical side, when we only make decisions from our mind, we follow what is given in society, right? We follow that blueprint and it works for a certain amount of time or extent, but then we realize, ooh, an aching inside. Yeah. We are not really connected to what do I really want? And that's when this like sometimes fight against, like or dispute between heart and head starts because we don't trust the heart anymore, right?
yeah.
Like we think, okay, we need to stay in the head, be logic, because that gives me safety and stability, and that makes me fit into the society. But when the heart wants to be heard, cannot stop it, right? Like when it's yawning, it's yawning. And so that's when we usually get interested in spirituality, energetic work, and begin to realize, whoa, okay, let me start listening to my heart and build a relationship again. Because, like you also said earlier, our heart is connected to our deepest desires, our deepest dreams, our soul, our intuition. So, cultivating that relationship with your heart is really powerful.
Yeah, yeah, that's a perfect explanation, and I think a perfect, like, introduction to this because, I know in my experience and, just personally, but also with other people and clients and things like that, it becomes a really heavy topic to talk about intuition specifically because I feel like people can kind of get into, the fear-based aspect of it. Like, if I have these feelings, if I have fear, does that mean that my intuition is telling me something? And if I'm scared, should I follow that? So all these different things come to mind. So I'm wondering what your sort of perspective is of that feeling of intuition. Is it sometimes fear-based? Is it sometimes like a very neutral kind of sensation? I feel like that might help a lot because I know for me, I've had to really come to terms with knowing that if it's a really, really heavy feeling, especially if it's around fear, it might not be this intuitive knowing. It just might be like a trigger or a flashback of something. So I'm curious what your thoughts are.
That's so interesting that you say that because I feel, yeah, there's this voice of fear, right? That usually is frazzled. That's usually quick and loud, and we need to find a solution now, now, now. So if this is the voice that you're hearing, then that's probably more your fear voice.
Mm,
But it's also interesting to ask that voice. I work a lot with parts work. So I usually go into, all right, that fear part, what does it need? Can I get curious about it and ask it, hey, fear part, what do you need? Because there's often a need connected to the fear, right? I need to stay safe. I need to be seen. I need to be loved. I need to be uh, recognized in some way, maybe.
mm,
So don't ignore the fear, but if you want to connect to your intuition, often it leads, like the straightest way is actually to look at the fear, be with it, feel it through, because then you understand what need lies beyond the fear. And when you understand that need, you will be feeling much more free to take action and make a decision. So that
mm,
is a way that you can go. If that feels hard, and for the beginning, then there's another voice that is smaller, even a whisper, right? And it is kind of like unbothered, I would even say. It's like whispering to you, and it tells you something, and then maybe it tells you a few times and then it stops. So sometimes you may feel like, oh, there is no more, I'm not getting messages. So if that happens to you, it's usually when your intuition spoke a lot but you
mm,
haven't been listening, or
mm.
maybe you've been listening but you haven't taken any action on the stuff that it told you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's these two ways to get to your intuition. And there's a third thing that I think is interesting. So when that little voice comes up,
Mm,
that may bring fear as afterthought, sort of, like the message comes in and then fear on top. So I
yeah.
ignore it, like, so check in with your own behavior on, like, when intuition comes up, what do you do? What happens in your body? Is there fear coming up? And then again, be with the fear. So that's what I would say, because sometimes it takes us to dismantle the fear in order to be able to listen to the
Mm.
intuition.
Yeah, I love that.
And
Yeah.
sorry, one more thing I would like to say is, everybody receives our intuition differently. So
Mm,
maybe if you know the five senses, right? Like hearing, tasting, touching, seeing, and smelling. And there
mm,
you have also higher senses of those. They are called the clairs. So you can be clairvoyant, you can be clairaudient, and I have a client that I'm working with at the moment who told me, yeah, but I always just know things. And I'm like, okay, because she thought she's not intuitive at all. She thinks she's just thinking. But then
yeah.
I asked her, okay, explain me a little bit what you mean with just thinking, just knowing. And then we realized that her intuition comes in that way, right? So your intuition could come in hearing something, in tasting and feeling and just knowing something. So that's also interesting that intuition can show up in so many ways.
Yeah. No, that's a really, really good clarification because I feel like, I think most of us might look at it as like very kind of one shape fits everybody and it's just intuition. So I like that you specified it based on like how do you like first and foremost before we even get into it, like how do you receive it? And I think that's great to even like contemplate because I don't know that I really sat with that even myself to say, how do I actually receive my intuition? Is it through this knowing? Is it through hearing? Is it through vision and images and things like that? So I love the idea of even sitting with that and exploring more of where that comes from. But something I love that you said was you called it a whisper. And in my own practice of sort of developing this, I can absolutely say that it very much is a whisper. And it's such a soft, soft kind of knowing and very, very neutral almost, and it doesn't have that very big emotional kind of expression the way that I guess always thought that it was. So I'm really it's kind of interesting to hear like a confirmation a little bit of like it is kind of a whisper and it is it does kind of come in waves and then might stop for a little while if we get really comfortable at ignoring it, which I know many of us do. So I think that's a really beautiful perspective of like listening beneath, almost like beneath the waves of like what's under
Mhm.
all of that, like under the current of it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And what's also interesting is if you know human design, or like the people listening, if you guys know
yeah.
human design, you can also look onto your energy type and then also how you make decisions. So for me, I'm emotional. So that means like I need to, because you just said that thing with the wave, I
Yeah.
need to go before I make decisions or big decisions. I cannot make the decision on a high or on the low. I need to let the wave go until the until it's done, and I'm in a more neutral place, and then I am sure that I am clear about how to make that decision. So if somebody is more a decision maker from their gut, then you got to train yourself with, listening to your gut. And like Alexandra said, it's also about, when we don't listen for a while to our intuition, it gets quieter. But then when you train yourself to take little actions on your intuition, it will get louder, and maybe not necessarily in a screamy kind of way, but in a more, sort of more confident. It's more clearer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love that. I think it does create a little bit more of like that, like assertive, like I trust myself and I trust what I'm saying yes to, or I trust what I'm saying no to. I also love, love, love human design. And I'm actually going to link it in the description for folks if they want to click on it and kind of go into it, because I think it does help explain a lot of things, especially connected to intuition. And much like yourself, I've learned that I also make decisions or can make decisions when I'm emotional. And so kind of like waiting, waiting for myself to settle before I jump into it, because it can create sort of this impulsive energy. And all of us know that when we create decisions based on just pure sheer impulse, it can either go really well or it can either go really bad. And so I think a lot of us that have gone down that bad road tend to get a little bit almost not willing to explore intuition because like, oh, it's always led me into trouble or danger or things like that. But yeah, I think the human design aspect could be really helpful of just like listening to your that like that pull, that subtle whisper, like you said, of what is it actually feeling in my heart. And I think it's almost like, to me, it brings up this image of like almost like walking through fog sometimes, goes like trying to move past like fear and triggers and traumas and different experiences, trying to get to that whisper where it's sort of at the very core and root. And for a lot of people, I feel like that can be quite challenging to kind of sift through a lot of that baggage that sits on top of it.
That's such a good way to put it. Like, such a good way to put it, I think, because, when we're so disconnected from ourselves and so in this, when we have the trauma glasses on or the fear glasses, sure, it's harder for us to connect to what we really want inside because we're in this survival mode of just, getting by. But I just have to think of my friends who have been artists or musicians from a young age. They've only done that thing and they were so clear about what they want to do. And I really admire that because this, like growing up and being encouraged maybe to follow whatever you want and being so clear about their direction. I don't know, I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it because I find that so incredible.
Yeah.
So maybe this is something also for the, for everybody listening, when you don't know what you want, find somebody you're inspired by that does
Mm,
something similar. That you sometimes it's just picking up those little um sparks, of like, oh my God, this person, how they do this, how they behave, how they move or whatever. That's so inspiring. Okay, I know that something in there. What is it? That is something that like inspires me in a way. So follow the breadcrumbs of inspiration, not necessarily comparison, but inspiration of what you
mm,
see in others where you feel like, oh, I want that too, from an authentic, from a heart centered way, right?
yeah. 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 I think that's perfect because and I like that you mentioned the comparison piece because I think that's key, right? Like you're looking at people that inspire you, people that, you're like, "Oh, I love what you do and I love how you do it and how you approach it." Not necessarily to say I want to be like you and this like and I feel like I'm less than you, but this idea of like, "Oh, maybe if I'm around this energy, I could also pick something up and like embody a part of that spark like you said." Which I think is like a key part of again, like not falling into the comparison game and not thinking like I'm less than because this person has more, but like I'm so privileged to be in their company and to learn from them and to like pick up these things. I think that's a really good reminder for folks because I think we kind of I know for myself, sometimes we tend to kind of like downplay that, like, oh, I don't want to be around if I'm around too many successful people or like motivating, inspiring people, it's just gonna make me feel crappy because I'm not in that place. But, like, when you share it, it made me think of how easy it is to kind of forget that there's another side of it, that I could also be a part of this group and pick up all this energy and not feel like I'm coming in with, like, half glass empty kinda thing.
Yeah, exactly. And when you feel like that, that's not a bad thing. This
Yeah.
is like your work coming to the surface. It's like
Mm,
don't try to be someone else around them, but rather like notice the fears or the insecurities that are coming up and get curious about them when you go back home. Like, today I felt around this person like I need to puff up. That's so interesting. Why do I feel this way?
mm,
And crack open that insecurity because it's like insecurity and fear are just like covers in a way. And within that, the core of that is something like a desire or a need or something you can embody. It's a little
mm,
part of you that you haven't integrated yet or owned yet. So, of like, that's so powerful. Notice that. And it's also part of intuition to pick that up and notice, I feel like this around them. So let me see what is beneath it because it will always teach you something. It will always benefit you.
yeah, yeah. And that when you were talking about that sort of that need and that desire at the very core of it, which we all have, I can think of so many reasons of why we tend to kind of again dismiss that but what do you think shows up in like in your work maybe in working with clients? What do you think shows up as that sort of inability or that fear perhaps of wanting to crack that open and wanting to sit with that desire or that need because sometimes I think we get a little bit like dismissive or scared of even allowing ourselves to feel like we have a need or a desire, and I wonder how that shows up for you.
Mm. That's so true, Alexandra. Like this, we don't even dare to go
Mm,
there. Yeah.
yeah.
Like I know this even from myself from the past. Like I always, since I was 14, 15, I always felt like, oh, I want to give people advice. I see
Mm,
people. but I would have never ever thought that I end up where I am now, in this position of like, yeah, advising people, supporting people. And that is mostly because I didn't feel like my needs matter and stuff like that.
Mm,
So just look at your childhood and where you come from and what patterns, like what belief patterns you picked up about yourself.
mm,
What do you believe about yourself? Do you believe about yourself, I'm worthy? I am special, or maybe special is not such a supportive word, but I am unique, or I get to be myself. What I have to say matters, right? Because most of us don't think that. And the fear that is connected to not uncovering those insecurities or limiting beliefs is fear of pain, right? We
mm,
want to run away from pain, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously. So when we, like, what can we do? We can expand our capacity to feel pain. When
mm.
we lose the fear of feeling pain, usually we stop at the fear. We're not even yet in the ocean of feeling pain. We're not in there yet.
Yeah.
We're stepping outside. We're not getting in the pool, right? And so when we can practice being in touch with our emotions, what does it mean? Sitting and feeling your fear, sitting and feeling your anger, sitting and feeling like the pain of loss, the pain of insecurity, pain of shame,
Mm,
guilt. The more we allow ourselves to process those emotions, the less we will fear to actually let our heart be heard by
mm.
us, be seen.
Yeah, yeah. I love the analogy of the pool and kind of stopping right there and not wanting to get in. And I talk a lot about mental health on this podcast, and I think that, and your experience with doing parts work, which is so integral in all of this. And the more I have these conversations with people who are doing all kinds of work like this, the more it makes sense to me when we're talking about like parts work as an example of just using those emotions as almost like separate entities and things that you can kind of like pluck out and look at in all its shapes and angles and say like maybe for the first time ever I'm looking at fear outside of just this concept, but looking at it as like a character or looking at it as some part of me. But I think it really helps to, like you said, to shape this idea um of our emotions becoming something that can teach us that there's a little bit more beyond that we can go, like jumping into the pool and or maybe even dipping your toe in or stepping
Totally.
in, like, yeah, one step at a time and exploring it in that way, knowing that we have those needs and desires. And as someone that, is very passionate about therapy and mental health, that idea of like going back into childhood and looking at all those patterns and stories, it really, I feel like it just kind of like opens Pandora's box and it cracks open a host of things that many of us have probably not sat with and even contemplated, like, oh, this is why I do what I do, or think the way that I do, or behave in these
Mm.
ways.
Yeah. And I feel like there's now so many books about inner child work, parts work, all the things, shadow work. And that's amazing. I always think, great, we're opening up our mind more to like even let our nervous system calm around those,
Mm,
terms and ideas. Yet there's still room, like reading about it is one thing, right? Like I have a lot of clients who come to me and like, so I know my inner child parts and all that, but it's still all up here,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
we still need to move into the body and practice feeling our emotion, not just, oh, I feel shame. Okay, maybe I'm mentally aware that there is shame, but what
Mm,
is the physical sensation? How does it feel in my body? Is it
mm,
in my heart space? Is it in my chest, in my belly, in my throat? Where
mm,
is it? And how can we sort of unleash it, but not unleash it in order to break loose like hellfire or something, but to
yeah.
actually process it, right? Like you said, through the ideas of what character is my shame, like
Mm,
where does it come from? What age has it? What
mm,
emotional signature? Where, is it mine only? Or then we can even go deeper into ancestral healing, right? Like maybe it's not just my shame, but my grandmother and theirs and theirs. So it can go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's very powerful.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I love that concept of like just like intellectualizing because that I've found also in my work to be very it's very safe, it's very careful and controlled, right? Like if I just think about it and it stays up here, then I don't have to, like you said, like I don't have to feel the pain of it. And what a way for our body to kind of like distance us from or like almost protect us from the pain. If I just stay in my head where I can create like sort of a fence around this story and contain it, then I don't have to necessarily feel it because there's no feeling. There's just a lot of thought and idea and I have more control to manipulate it in my head. Whereas in my body, like you said, it's just all raw and tender and vulnerable and very, very feeling.
Mhm.
And so maybe, you know, I think of sometimes struggle with intuition can be because we do have to drop into the body. And I kind of think of my intuition as like, kind of sitting in my gut, kind of sitting in my belly, like this really, really deep space. And I have to sort
Mhm.
of descend and kind of walk my way down into my body. And if my body doesn't feel like a safe place, then it's going to be quite challenging for me to access that
Yeah.
intuitive whisper, like you said.
Such a good point. Yeah. Yeah. If we don't feel safe in our body, and often we don't notice because,
Mm,
so many people, they are runners, they are sports people, they meditate, they do all those things, and they feel like, no, but I'm in my body,
yeah.
and yes, ish,
Yeah.
but then, but then we sometimes don't even notice that we're not feeling our emotions. So that is such a different language than thinking, and
Mm,
sometimes we don't even know how to
mm.
get there. No, so
Yeah.
it's such a, actually, I find it very exciting, this process. When I get my own sessions from my teacher,
Mm,
I look forward to, first of all, what am I going to discover today? And then like this emotional catharsis in a way, like it's actually also so liberating when you release energy from your body that has been held in there for weeks, months, years, so like emptying out the emotional body, which is part of the physical body,
mm,
can also lead sometimes to releasing stored weight,
mm.
or like stored inflammation or anything like that, right? And relaxing our muscles and all these things, so it goes very, very broad and deep. So
Yeah.
I'm so passionate about it. You too, I can notice that. So it's, yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Your statement of or actually just the question of like what am I going to discover today is so beautiful because you I feel like we're always kind of like in the middle of I could either choose to look at this as like incredibly scary and then I'm not going to do it, or like you said, I can choose to see this as something that could be really wonderful and really, I don't know, almost adventurous in a way if I were to kind of give into that other sort of part of me, that seeking part. And so I think that's a really great way to kind of like for anyone to start exploring this. Maybe instead of like almost like a reframe, instead of looking at this like, oh my God, what's gonna come out today? Maybe that reframe of what am I gonna discover that could be really beautiful and telling and raveling in a way. I'm wondering what your experience has been working with, like you said, I love your example of people who are athletic or who are runners or clients who are sort of very movement based. But then
Mhm.
that like that differentiation between, well, there's something like there's working out and moving the body, but then there's also like sitting with what we're talking about. And I'm wondering like what's the kind of like a quick process, not quick process, but what's a process that you kind of use with your clients to help them understand before you
Mhm.
even get into the work, but like understand like, oh, there's a difference between movement and really embodying your emotions.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that people who are very movement oriented, usually from my clients, I know that people who are very movement oriented are also very business oriented and
Right.
very analytical and quick on their feet, quick on their
Mm,
in their head. So what they need is slowing down.
Mm.
That's so annoying to them. That's so annoying to them. They hate it, like
Yeah.
hate is a strong word, but I mean it's really like slowing them down is a new world. So if you just get really slow and you close your eyes down and you just for a moment, that's how I start with them.
Mm,
Focus on your breathing, breathing in and out. And first of all, focus on where does your breath go in your body? Yeah, when you close your eyes, where does it go? Does it enter your belly at all? And
mm,
often it doesn't. Often it stays up here. So
mm,
first we practice, all right, what is belly breathing? So let's get into the belly. And that already gives them like a feeling of achievement, which is also important, right? And then we move into, all right, so usually I would talk with them about, okay, what is the topic today? Like sometimes they come with one, sometimes not. And we always get to sort of like the granular thing
mm,
for the session on that day. And then we move into, all right, so let's connect to that part of you. So closing eyes, like I just said, with the breathing,
mm,
and then just feel into that topic. So that could be an emotion, that could be a discussion, that could be a fear, whatever it is. And then I gently ask them to locate it in their body. And that's sometimes hard, no? So just
mm,
taking a moment to begin to locate it is already a lot. And when they have it, just a blink of it. Sometimes it's also, I feel nothing.
mm,
And then I say, okay, so feel the nothingness.
mm,
Where do you feel the nothingness? Oh, all over. Okay, so take a deep breath and see if you can even intensify the feeling of nothingness. That's already a lot. And from there, usually intuition takes over. But they don't notice that it's intuition because they're like, well, I'm not feeling something, but there's this image in my head. So,
mm,
right, like there's so many connection points that maybe the person doesn't even realize
mm,
that is intuition. Like an image come up, or I've been just thinking about my grandmother for some reason, So intuition is way more subtle than you think, or it is not one thing. So just notice everything that happens within you and just notice, oh, is this something random? And sometimes when it's something random, you could be sure it's your intuition coming up for some reason.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I feel like that's a perfect, perfect, perfect way to close. Not only did we come full circle with intuition, but this idea of like when you're asking them to sort of lean into that nothingness. And wow, what a place for what a place for intuition to live, sort of beneath that nothingness, and then for it to take over and you not even know. And I will say I've done a couple of your breathwork classes, and I know that
Oh,
when yeah, and I love doing that style of breathwork because I feel like it really does kind of take you sort of really deep into that space. But I've noticed when I do it, um, there's this sort of like I can see it now, which is nice, but this space where I'm in that sort of very nothingness. It's body based. It's very somatic. It's very intuitive, and then you can kind of like hear like a little bit of like an ego, or like you can hear your rational mind like what's happening, what are we doing, like what is this, so I feel like it's really interesting to get to a space where you can kind of notice when you start to get pulled away from that space and some other voice comes in, or like your
yeah.
body or your mind wants to like fight against what's happening. So I love when that happens, but I can also understand that it can be a little frustrating because you almost you don't want to like think your way out of it, but you can't help it because your mind is so curious about what's happening.
Yeah, true. And it's so interesting that you say that because I think a lot of listeners will be able to identify with that because usually we're so in it that we
Mm,
don't realize, oh, now my ego is coming up on, oh,
yeah.
now my logical mind wants me to get out of this. Right.
Mm,
So already noticing when you're fidgeting, when you're getting distracted, when you are resisting in some way, that this is just a protection, right?
mm,
Like, let's not go deeper because we don't know what to expect in the depth. So
mm.
it's powerful to notice, oh, I'm doing this, so let me bring myself back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
amazing.
love that. And I love I think it's a nice reframe you just shared of like we're not necessarily stopping ourselves from going deeper because there's something wrong with us, but this idea of like you said, like we don't know what's there. And if I don't know what's there, then I'm going to protect myself, and I want to control that, not because I'm a controlling person, but because there's something there that I don't know. And what's it like to open myself up to like that not knowing, which can be really
Mm,
scary.
totally.
So yeah, I love that. Vanessa, thank you so, so very much. This last little bit here is letting folks know where they can find you, if there's any offerings or services that you want to share with folks. I know that I can speak for your breathwork classes that I've done, and they've been wonderful. So
Thank you.
I'm happy to let you share where folks can find you and connect with you so that they can get all the benefits of your classes and your work.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, Alexandra, thank you so much for having me. This was such a great conversation. You're such a good interviewer. And yeah, so if you want to find me, you can find me on my website, vanessanaumann.com. You can find me on YouTube, Vanessa Naumann, as well. And on my website, you will have like a few sections, one-on-one work, courses, and then events. And under events, you can find my monthly breathwork session. And I also have a couple of recorded sessions if you want something to do at your own pace. So check it
Okay.
out.
Yeah, of course. And I will also be more than happy to link and connect folks to your podcast as well, which I know is where I found a lot of your content, especially the what we talked about today about intuition and kind of following from the heart when making decisions. And I think people would be really interested in letting that become a part of their practice. So I'll definitely link all of that and make sure that it's available so folks can connect.
Thank you. And I hope you come also on my podcast. So that would be nice to have the
Anytime.
option.
Anytime. Thank you so much. You've been really wonderful and I appreciate it. And can't wait to share this with folks. And yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.